Welcome back, everyone. We've got a mountain of material on career transitions to dig into articles, personal stories, research the whole shebang. So let's dive deep and help you navigate your next career move with confidence.
One thing that caught my eye right away was this whole idea of repackaging yourself. It sounds a bit, uh, I don't know, intense, maybe.
Yeah, it can be a little intimidating if you think about it like you're trying to transform into someone you're not. But the interesting thing is all this material really stresses being genuine, being authentic. It's more about looking at those core strengths you have and then figuring how they can be valuable in a different context.
Okay, so it's like taking a good look at what you know and what you've done, your skills, your experience, but instead of just listing everything out, you're trying to connect the dots and show how all that fits into a new role, maybe even like a whole new field. Exactly. And one thing that really jumped out at me was how much these sources talk about the emotional side of changing careers. It's like they compare it to, get this, the stages of grief, you know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, then acceptance.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah,
But now that you mention it, it makes sense. You're leaving something behind, even if it's something you wanted to leave. There's still a process there, right?
right. So let's say you're in that bargaining stage. You might be so eager to just be done with the job search that you take the first offer that comes along, even if deep down you know it's not really the right fit.
Or what if you're stuck in that anger phase?
Yeah.
You might be so frustrated that you end up, I don't know, sabotaging yourself without realizing it. Maybe you're negative in interviews or just not putting your best foot forward. This is making me realize how important it is to, like, really check in with yourself. Where are you at emotionally in this whole process?
Absolutely. And that's where this interesting thing about journaling comes in. There's research that suggests that just writing about your feelings, even for like 20 minutes a day, can really help improve your job search results.
That's pretty amazing. It's like getting all those emotions out on paper clears your head so you can focus on the practical steps.
Exactly. It's about processing those emotions and then using them to fuel your job search. So
Uh,
once you've dealt with the emotional stuff, the material really gets into creating a solid plan. There's a lot of talk about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound, and even writing a mission statement for your career. Did any of that resonate with you?
For sure. I think where it gets really helpful, though, is when it goes beyond just defining those goals. It gives you concrete examples of how to actually use that framework for different career goals.
Hmm.
Like, say your goal is to become a freelancer. One of your SMART goals might be to network with at least 5 potential clients over the next month.
That's a great point. And speaking of networking, the source material really stresses connecting with people before you even start applying for jobs.
Right. It's not just about asking for favors. It's more about building those connections, getting insights, getting a feel for what's happening in your field.
Exactly. They call it informational interviewing, and it can be a goldmine of information. Even if it doesn't directly lead to a job offer, those conversations can really help you fine-tune your approach.
So speaking of fine-tuning, there's a whole section on transferable skills. This is where that repackaging idea comes in. It's described as taking inventory of your employment toolbox. Did that make sense to you?
Yeah, it really did, because it goes beyond just listing your skills. It's about thinking about those times when you actually use those skills and were successful. It's about making the connection between what you've already done and what you want to do next.
And they have some really cool stories about people who made like these big career jumps that when you look closer actually made a lot of sense because they were drawing on things they already knew how to do.
Hmm.
Like there was this chef who became a, wait for it, web designer.
Right. He realized that his experience in the kitchen had taught him all about presentation, creating a user-friendly flow, things he could totally apply to designing websites.
It's making me rethink all the things I've done in a new way.
Right.
What are some ways they suggest you actually like pinpoint those transferable skills you have?
There's this one exercise they recommend that I thought was really interesting. It's about thinking back to your past jobs and pinpointing those tasks that really energized you, those things you felt genuinely good about doing. It's almost like you're working backwards, figuring out your ideal role based on what already gets you excited.
That's such a smart approach. It's like those times when work didn't feel like work at all. And I love that it shifts your focus away from just landing any job
Mhm.
to creating a career that truly motivates you.
That's the whole point. It's not just about the next paycheck. It's about figuring out your values, what you're passionate about, and finding work that aligns with all of that. Now, one thing that I thought was really insightful was how the material talks about the impact all this transition stuff can have on your relationships, the people in your life. It even suggests that sometimes the people closest to us might be the most resistant to the changes we're trying to make.
You know what? I was surprised by that too at first. But when they explain it, it makes sense. It's often because those people have their own fears and anxieties that get mixed up in our choices.
Exactly. Like a parent, even with the best intentions, might not want you to take a lower paying job, even if it means you'd be doing something you truly love. Or a spouse might be worried about the stress that comes with the job change.
It's a good reminder that everyone's going through this transition in their own way, even if they're not the ones switching careers. And it makes me think about how important it is to talk openly with the people you care about, explain what you want, and, set boundaries when you need to.
Right. It's about getting support, but also protecting your vision, your goals for your career.
So we've talked about how all this affects us emotionally, how crucial it is to have a plan, and even those tough conversations with family and friends. What's next on this deep dive?
Well, let's get into the practical strategies, the nuts and bolts of showing those skills and your experience to potential employers. We'll look at tailoring your resume and cover letter, how to prepare for interviews, and even negotiating salary and benefits.
Sounds like we're getting down to business. I'm ready.
Okay, so let's get into some of that practical stuff. One thing that really stood out to me in all this material is how much they emphasize tailoring your resume and your cover letter for each specific job. I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, but I bet a lot of people just use like a generic template?
Oh, for sure. It's so tempting to just fire off the same resume to a ton of jobs. But yeah, I can see how taking that extra time to really make it fit each job could make a huge difference.
Hmm.
What are some of the things they suggest for doing that well?
Well, they say to really use that job description as like a roadmap. Look for those keywords, those phrases the employer uses, and then make sure those are front and center in your resume and cover letter.
So it's almost like you're speaking their language, showing
Yeah.
them you get what they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And they even say to go a step further, like do some research on the company, try to understand their culture, their values. If you can work that into your application, it shows you've done your homework and you're genuinely interested.
I like that they talk about telling a story in your resume and cover letter. It's not just a list of skills and experience, it's more about creating a narrative that shows what makes you valuable.
Oh, yeah. They even recommend this thing called the PAIR technique. It stands for Problem, Action, Result. So you describe your accomplishments using that framework.
Okay, I'm curious. Can you give me an example? Like, how would that work?
Sure. So let's say you worked in customer service and your job was to reduce customer complaints. So the problem was that customers were waiting too long. The action you took was to implement a new system to handle those calls better, and the result was a 20% decrease in complaints.
Ah, I see. So instead of just saying reduce customer complaints, you're giving them this little story. You're showing how you solved a problem and made things better. That's so much stronger.
Right. And whenever you can, use numbers to quantify your achievements. Did you increase sales by a certain percentage? Save the company money? Make a process more efficient? Numbers just jump off the page.
They also talk about using action verbs, power words, to make your resume stand out. It's like giving your skills a little extra oomph.
Yeah. Instead of saying like responsible for, use words like managed, led, developed, implemented. Makes your contribution sound way more dynamic?
Okay, so let's say you've aced the resume and cover letter, and you've got an interview. Any tips for knocking it out of the park?
Well, these sources really stress being prepared. I mean, really prepared. Research the company, understand what they're all about, their mission, even look up the people who are going to be interviewing you.
I'll admit, I haven't always been the best at that, the research part. But I can see how much of a difference it can make. If you go in and ask smart questions and connect your skills to what the company's trying to do, it shows you're really invested.
For sure. And they suggest practicing how you'll answer those common interview questions. Think about your strengths, your weaknesses, your career goals, times you faced a challenge, and how you handled it.
You know, I used to think that practicing would make me sound like robotic. But now I see it as a way to get my thoughts in order so I can be more confident.
Absolutely. And even in a virtual interview, don't forget about nonverbal communication. Eye contact, good posture, dressing professionally. It shows you're taking it seriously.
I also say to have questions ready to ask the interviewer, which I think is so smart. Shows you're curious and engaged.
Exactly. Ask about the company culture, the team you'd be working with, opportunities for growth, those kinds of things.
Okay, so here's something that could be a little, I don't know, awkward for some people. Negotiating salary and benefits.
Right. It's important to know your worth. Be ready to stand up for yourself. And that means doing your research. What's the salary range for similar jobs in your field, in your area? Know that going in.
And it's not just about the money, right? Think about benefits too. Health insurance, vacation time, retirement plan. What are some of their tips for negotiating well?
Well, they say to be professional, respectful. Even though you're pushing for what you need, it's a collaboration, not a fight.
They also say it's okay to ask for time to think about an offer before you say yes or no.
Absolutely. Don't feel like you have to decide right then and there. Take your time, weigh your options, make sure it fits with what you want.
This deep dive is really thorough. We've talked about resumes, cover letters, interviews, even negotiating. Is there anything else?
They also talk about the fact that not every job is going to be a perfect fit, and that's okay. It's about finding a role that aligns with your values, your skills, and your goals as much as possible.
And they remind us that even if a job isn't perfect, it can still give you valuable experience and new skills that you can use to keep moving forward.
That's right. Every experience is a chance to learn. Sometimes it takes a few steps to find the right path.
That's a good point. I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to find that dream job right away.
It's a journey, not a sprint to the finish line. And it's important to be kind to yourself, and celebrate those little wins along the way.
I love that. It's about progress, not perfection.
Speaking of which, I thought it was interesting how they brought up this concept of spiritual compensation.
Yeah. That's the idea that it's not just about the paycheck. It's about feeling like your work has a purpose, that you're making a positive impact, that it lines up with your values. I think that's especially important these days. People are looking for more than just a job. They want work that has meaning, that makes a difference.
Exactly. It's about finding work that nourishes you, not just your bank account. And sometimes, yeah, that might mean taking a job that pays less, but gives you more room to grow, be creative, or have a bigger impact.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, the nitty-gritty of finding and landing a job, but the material also goes deeper. Things like finding your calling, dealing with the emotional side of it all. Any last insights before we wrap up? I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from all this is that changing careers is really about figuring yourself out. It's not just finding a different job. It's about getting to know yourself better, what you value, what you're good at, what you actually enjoy doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the material has some cool exercises for doing just that. One that really stuck with me was this one where you list 5 things you just did not like about past jobs. And then you figure out the opposite of those things. It's a simple way to figure out what you really value in a job.
I love that. It's like you're using those bad experiences to build a picture of what you actually want.
Exactly. And once you know those things you just won't compromise on, you can be way more focused in your search. Look for those opportunities that actually fit with what you want.
They also talk about finding your calling, which sounds, I don't know, kind of big and maybe a little out there. But I guess it comes down to finding work that feels meaningful, like it has a purpose.
Right. It's about using your skills and talents to do something bigger than yourself. And there's this quote I really liked. It says that one doesn't so much find love in their work, but brings love to it.
Wow. That's really beautiful. It's like, even if it's not your dream job, you can still find ways to bring your passion and your values into what you do.
And they give you ideas for how to do that. Things like volunteering, maybe using your skills for a cause you care about, mentoring someone. It's about finding those bits of joy and purpose, even in your everyday work.
They also talk specifically about those who are, as they put it, mature workers. So people 58 and older. They might feel like they have a different set of challenges in the job market.
It's true, there can be some biases based on age, but the material encourages people to really focus on what they bring to the table, their experience, their knowledge, those connections they've built over the years.
And they say it's important to stay current, keeping up with technology, showing employers you're adaptable and willing to learn.
Yeah. Prove you're not stuck in the past. Show them you're ready to grow and change. They also say to make sure your resume and cover letter really highlight what you've accomplished in your career, the value you brought to those past roles. Make it relevant to what employers are looking for today.
So we've covered so much, from how all this makes us feel to the practical stuff of finding fulfilling work. What really stands out for you from all this?
What sticks with me is that this whole career transition thing, it's a journey. It's not like you reach a destination and you're done. There will be good days and bad days, times you're sure of yourself and times you're not. The important thing is to be patient with yourself. Be happy about those small victories and just keep going.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Talk to career counselors, mentors, your friends, family, anyone who can give you support and guidance.
And don't forget about all those resources online, those communities where you can get advice and support. There's a ton of stuff out there. Job boards, networking groups, online courses.
We'd love to hear what resonated with you from this deep dive. What are you going to try in your own job search? What questions do you still have? Share your thoughts and questions with us.
And remember, that dream job might be closer than you think. Believe in yourself, keep taking action, and never stop learning.
You've got this. We'll see you next time.
See ya!